You're standing at the forge at dawn, and the heat hasn't even started yet, but your hands already ache from yesterday. The soot is embedded so deep under your fingernails that you've forgotten what clean hands look like. Your back is bent from years of leaning over the anvil, your lungs thick with smoke, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder if this is all you'll ever be. A blacksmith, a shadow in the corner of history, a man whose name no one will remember, but whose work everyone will use. And here's the thing, no one tells you about medieval blacksmiths. They weren't just workers. They were trapped between survival and exhaustion, between reverence and invisibility, between being essential and being expendable. They cared too much about their craft, and it destroyed them slowly, one hammer strike at a time. Let's talk about what it really meant to care that much in a world that gave you nothing back. Because being a medieval blacksmith wasn't romantic. It wasn't noble. It was brutal. You started young, maybe 7 or 8 years old, handed over to a master who would work you like an animal for years before you ever touched a real commission. You weren't learning a trade. You were learning to endure. You pumped the bellows until your arms went numb. You cleaned the forge until your skin cracked. You watched, quietly, as the master shaped metal into miracles, and you wondered if you'd ever be good enough to do the same. And the worst part, you cared. You cared so much it hurt. Because this wasn't just a job, this was your entire identity. Your worth, your only chance at mattering in a world that barely saw you as human. Here's where the psychology gets heavy. People who care too much often do so because they've been conditioned to believe their value is tied to their output. Medieval blacksmiths lived this reality every single day. You weren't valued for who you were. You were valued for what you made. A sword, a horseshoe, a nail. Your hands were tools, not parts of a person. And when you're taught from childhood that your worth is measured in how much you can produce, how much pain you can endure, how many hours you can work without complaint, something inside you breaks. You stop seeing yourself as someone deserving of rest. You start seeing yourself as a machine that must keep running, no matter the cost. And the blacksmith, he kept running, through burns that never fully healed, through lungs that filled with ash, through nights he couldn't sleep because his body had forgotten how to stop aching. But here's the darker truth. Medieval blacksmiths were also trapped in a cycle of emotional labor that no one talks about. They didn't just create objects, they created hope. A farmer's plow meant survival. A knight's sword meant honor. A mother's cooking pot meant her family wouldn't starve. Every piece of metal the blacksmith shaped carried someone else's future, someone else's dreams, someone else's life. And he felt that weight, he absorbed it. He carried the hopes of an entire village on his shoulders, and no one ever asked him how heavy it was. No one ever said, "Are you okay?" Because he wasn't supposed to be a person with feelings. He was supposed to be the guy who fixed things, the guy who made things, the guy who held the world together while his own world fell apart. Neurologically, this kind of existence wreaks havoc on the brain. When you care deeply and receive little in return, your brain gets stuck in a cycle of hypervigilance and depletion. You're constantly scanning for the next problem to solve, the next person to help, the next piece of work that needs doing. Your stress hormones stay elevated. Your nervous system never fully relaxes. And over time, this doesn't just exhaust you, it rewires you. You begin to believe that rest is weakness, that boundaries are selfish, that your pain doesn't matter as long as others are satisfied. Medieval blacksmiths lived in a state of chronic burnout, and they didn't even have a word for it. They just called it life, and society. Society loved them for it. The blacksmith was respected, sure, but in the way you respect a tool. You appreciate what it does, but you don't think about what it costs. No one worried about the blacksmith's health. No one asked if he needed help. No one noticed when his hands started to tremble, or when he coughed up black mucus, or when his eyes grew dull from too many years staring into fire. He was essential, yes, but he was also invisible. And that's the cruelest part of caring too much. You become so useful that people forget you're human. They forget you bleed. They forget you break. But here's the quiet, aching truth that connects the medieval blacksmith to you, right now. Reading this, you know what it feels like to give everything and receive nothing. You know what it feels like to care so much that it empties you. You know what it feels like to be essential and invisible at the same time. Maybe you're not standing at a forge, but you're standing somewhere, holding something together for people who may never fully see you. And just like the blacksmith, you've been conditioned to believe that your worth is in what you do, not in who you are. That your pain doesn't matter as long as others are okay. That rest is something you'll earn later, when the work is done. But the work is never done. The forge never cools. And you're still there, hammering away, hoping that one day someone will notice. Hoping that one day it will feel like enough. So here's the realization. The blacksmith didn't fail because he cared too much. He suffered because the world took his care and gave him nothing in return. And maybe that's you too. Maybe you've been giving and giving, and the world has been taking and taking, and you're starting to wonder if caring this much was ever worth it. But here's the thing, it was worth it. Not because of what you produced, not because of who you helped, but because caring deeply, even when it costs you, is one of the most human things you can do. The tragedy isn't that you care too much. The tragedy is that the world hasn't learned to care for you the way you care for it. So ask yourself this, If the blacksmith could step away from the forge, just for a moment, and remember that he was more than his work, more than his hands, more than what he made for others, would he? And if he could, would you?